There's something intoxicating about the sound of raw power, the kind that rumbles through your chest before it ever reaches your ears. Picture a wide stretch of American asphalt shimmering under the afternoon sun, a car idling at the edge of motion, engine pulsing like a heartbeat waiting for release. Decades fade, but the allure doesn't. That perfect blend of aggression and grace keeps calling to anyone who's ever felt the pull of mechanical freedom. It's not about nostalgia, it's about permanence, the way certain machines refuse to be forgotten no matter how the world changes around them. And today we're diving into one of those icons, the kind that defined its decade and then outlived it entirely, reshaping what power, style, and attitude could mean on American roads. Hit that like button, subscribe for more deep dives, and drop a comment with the next classic you want to see brought back to life. When the Chevrolet Camaro Z28 first appeared in 1967, it wasn't just another sporty coupe, it was a declaration of intent. The Z28 was Chevrolet's answer to a brewing storm, born from the desire to dominate a new kind of racing and to capture the hearts of drivers who wanted something fiercer than the average pony car. Its origins are steeped in a mix of competition and clever marketing. Chevrolet needed a machine that could compete under the rules of the SCCA's Trans Am series, and the Z28 was that precision weapon disguised as a street car. It wasn't about brute power alone. Chevy's engineers built it for balance, tuning the suspension, steering, and brakes so that the Z28 could carve corners as confidently as it blasted down a straight. The 302 cubic inch small block V8 was a purpose-built piece of machinery, small enough to meet regulations but tuned to scream at high RPMs, creating a power band that rewarded skill behind the wheel. This was the essence of the Z28. Not just fast, but fast the right way. The first-generation Camaro Z28 carried a certain mystique, a kind of restrained aggression that made it instantly recognizable. It wasn't as flashy as some of its bigger engine siblings, yet it had a purity that enthusiasts immediately understood. The stripes, the deep rumble, the precise handling, all of it spoke to drivers who valued control as much as chaos. Owning a Z28 in the late 60s meant you were in on something, a quieter rebellion compared to the muscle car mainstream. The car's designers and engineers understood that real performance wasn't just measured in horsepower, it was about how the machine connected with the driver, how it translated motion into meaning. Every decision that shaped the 1967-1969 Camaro Z28 came from this ethos of balance. Chevrolet could have easily dropped in a larger engine to chase drag strip glory, but instead, the team focused on building a racer's car for the street. That decision gave the Z28 its unique identity. The small block engine's lighter weight meant sharper handling. The close ratio 4-speed manual made every shift an event. And while it lacked the effortless torque of bigger V8s, it more than made up for it in how it delivered its power: urgent, responsive, alive. The experience of driving a Z28 wasn't about ease, it was about engagement. It made you work, but it rewarded every ounce of effort. Beyond its engineering, the Z28 embodied a cultural shift. The late 1960s were a time of upheaval, and cars reflected that restlessness. The Z28 wasn't a luxury item or a status symbol, it was a statement of individuality. It appealed to the young, the ambitious, the ones who wanted to be part of something raw and real. Chevrolet's marketing leaned into this spirit, positioning the Camaro as a rival to the Mustang, but with an edge, a sense that it was built for those who didn't want to follow. And in garages across America, enthusiasts responded. The Z28 became a fixture at local tracks and street meets, not because it was the most powerful car, but because it was the one that felt the most authentic. As production continued through the end of the first generation in 1969, the Camaro Z28 evolved subtly but meaningfully. Each model year brought refinements that deepened its appeal. The 1969 version, with its aggressive new styling and updated chassis tweaks, became the definitive expression of the breed, a car that looked fast even when parked. The driving dynamics improved, the engine sang even louder. Chevrolet had created not just a car, but a legend in motion. To understand why the Camaro Z28 captured so much attention, you have to consider the context of its birth. America was obsessed with speed, but not all speed was equal. Muscle cars like the Chevelle SS or GTO were about straight-line dominance. The Z28 was about precision. It gave drivers a taste of European-style handling in an American package, a rare combination that made it stand out from its domestic peers. Chevy's engineers poured their racing experience into its design, and that racing DNA translated directly to the street. Yet owning a Z28 wasn't just about performance, it was about identity. The car became a badge of credibility. You couldn't fake owning one. You had to know what you were getting into. It wasn't built for comfort or convenience. It was loud, it demanded attention, and it delivered an experience that felt unfiltered. This purity became its defining trait. In the years that followed, the Z28's reputation grew. Collectors began to recognize its importance not only as a muscle car, but as a turning point in how American manufacturers thought about performance. It wasn't the biggest or the most powerful, but it was one of the smartest. The Z28 proved that less could be more, that engineering finesse could outshine brute force. That lesson would ripple through future generations of performance cars, influencing everything from design philosophy to driver expectations. As we move forward, the story of the Chevrolet Camaro Z28 only gets more complex, because while the first generation established the legend, the decades that followed tested it in ways no one could have predicted. Next, we'll explore how this icon fought to stay relevant as the world around it changed, and how it became a symbol of American endurance in the face of shifting tastes and tightening rules. When the Chevrolet Camaro Z28 returned in the early 1970s, it faced a different world from the one that had birthed it. The muscle car era was peaking, but clouds were forming on the horizon. Emissions regulations, fuel crises, insurance penalties, all conspiring to choke the horsepower that had defined an American dream. Yet the Camaro Z28 persisted, adapting without surrendering its identity. Chevrolet understood that its symbol of racing-bred performance couldn't simply vanish, so they evolved it carefully, strategically, often against the odds. The 1970-1973 second-generation Camaro Z28 represented both refinement and resistance. It gained a sleeker, more European silhouette, a design shift that mirrored changing tastes while preserving the car's aggression. Under the hood, the 350 cubic inch LT1 small block became the beating heart, delivering sharp response and real-world drivability at a time when performance numbers across Detroit were beginning to decline. This Z28 wasn't just about straight-line speed anymore. It was about how that power felt, how it connected the driver to the road through sound, vibration, and feedback. Chevrolet emphasized precision over spectacle, a move that kept the Z28 relevant even as the muscle car field thinned. The oil embargo of 1973 hit the industry like a shockwave. Gas lines stretched for blocks, and suddenly performance cars were seen as indulgences. For many, it seemed the end of an era. The Z28's production paused in 1975, a casualty of regulation and shifting priorities. But the Camaro nameplate endured, and its enthusiasts refused to let the performance legacy fade. Chevrolet listened. By 1977, the Z28 returned, not quite the fire-breathing racer of old, but a fighter reborn for a new time. Its rebirth carried symbolism. It was proof that even under constraint, spirit could survive. This second act leaned on styling and attitude as much as mechanical bite. The late 70s Z28 became a pop culture staple, appearing on posters in movies and across suburban driveways. Its hood scoops, stripes, and stance captured attention, even as horsepower waned. It was rebellion dressed in new clothing, an echo of its 1960s self, but still instantly recognizable. For a generation that had grown up with the original, the revived Z28 was both a reminder and a reassurance. America's love for fast cars might have dimmed, but it hadn't died. By the time the 1980s arrived, the world had changed again. Technology, aerodynamics, and computerization began to redefine what performance meant. The 1982 Camaro Z28 ushered in the third generation, a sleek wedge of modernity that traded brute displacement for precision engineering. Lighter, lower, and more efficient, it reflected Chevrolet's attempt to bridge old-school muscle with new-school intelligence. Fuel injection replaced carburetors. Digital dashboards hinted at a new age. The Z28 evolved from muscle to momentum, capturing a new audience that wanted the look and feel of power wrapped in futuristic confidence. The 1980s also brought competition from unexpected corners, imports offering turbocharged efficiency and handling finesse. challenged the traditional American formula. The Camaro Z28 had to prove that V8 power could coexist with modern sensibilities. Through constant refinements, better suspension tuning, improved aerodynamics, and innovations like the tuned port injection system, Chevrolet kept the Z28 credible. It wasn't just nostalgia driving sales. It was continued relevance. Even in a decade obsessed with technology and excess, the Z28 managed to remain authentic. Enthusiasts noticed. The third-generation Camaro Z28 developed a following of its own, celebrated for its affordability, tunability, and unmistakable personality. It wasn't as raw as the 1969 original, but it was a performance car people could live with daily. It connected past and future in a way few cars managed to do. That connection was its greatest strength. It carried the DNA of the first Z28 but translated it for a new era. By the early 1990s, the fourth-generation Camaro Z28 entered a performance renaissance. Chevrolet embraced advanced materials, better chassis rigidity, and improved aerodynamics. Most notably, in 1993, the Z28 received the LT1 V8, a derivative of the engine powering the Corvette. Suddenly, the Z28 was back in the big leagues, pushing over 275 horsepower and challenging anything in its price range. The resurgence of American performance was underway, and the Z28 stood proudly at its center. The mid-90s Z28 offered something many thought lost, a genuine, affordable driver's car that felt alive. Its long hood, rear-wheel drive balance, and thunderous soundtrack delivered sensations that connected directly to the original spirit. Yet it was more sophisticated, more livable, and crucially faster than ever. For enthusiasts who had grown up dreaming about the 60s models, this was redemption. Chevrolet had brought back the feeling, only now with the benefits of modern reliability and comfort. But as the 2000s approached, challenges re-emerged. Changing consumer priorities, stricter emissions, and the rise of SUVs threatened the coupe's relevance. By 2002, production of the Camaro, and with it the Z28, came to a halt. For the first time in decades, there was no Camaro in Chevrolet's lineup. To fans, it felt like losing a friend. The name had become synonymous with American performance, and its absence left a hole no amount of marketing could fill. Yet the legacy of the Chevrolet Camaro Z28 was too powerful to fade. Collectors began preserving pristine examples of each generation. Tuner communities kept modifying and racing them. Even younger enthusiasts born after the original muscle era discovered the Z28's appeal through used markets and online forums. It remained a symbol of what American engineering could achieve when passion led the way. Every era of the Z28 told a story of adaptation. From the high-revving small blocks of the late 60s to the high-tech V8s of the 90s, it continuously reflected the spirit of its time while carrying the weight of its history. That continuity made it more than just a car line. It became a chronicle of American resilience. Chevrolet could have abandoned it at any point, but they didn't. The Z28 survived recessions, regulations, and changing tastes because it meant something deeper than horsepower figures. It represented belief, the belief that performance, properly understood, is timeless. As the story moves into the modern era, the stakes grow even higher. Next, we'll see how the Chevrolet Camaro Z28 made its comeback in the 21st century, reborn with cutting-edge technology, renewed purpose, and the kind of power that reminded the world exactly why the legend was never meant to die. The Chevrolet Camaro Z28 in every generation from 1967 to 2014 represents more than a lineage of muscle. It's a living thesis on how America interprets performance. From its first small block whale to the last naturally aspirated LS7 Scream, the Z28 has never been about easy thrills. It's about purity, about the mechanical honesty that connects human and machine in a way few modern cars dare to attempt. To own one isn't simply to collect horsepower. It's to inherit a philosophy, one that values control, precision, and purpose over excess. For US buyers and collectors today, the Z28 remains both accessible and aspirational. Early examples from the late 60s command strong prices, especially unrestored originals or models with matching drivetrains. They're museum pieces that can still shred asphalt when properly maintained. Second and third generation Z28s are more attainable, offering a gateway into the legend for enthusiasts on a budget, though rust and neglect are common foes. The fourth-generation cars, particularly those with the LT1 engine, blend affordability with real performance credibility. And the 2014 Z28? It's already a modern collectible. Low production numbers, track-focused design, and its place as one of the last great analog V8 machines make it a blue-chip piece of American performance history. Ownership comes with responsibilities. Maintenance on older Z28s requires patience and expertise. Carburetors, bushings, and electrical quirks are part of the experience. Parts are available thanks to a robust aftermarket, but authenticity matters for collector value. Modern examples, while more reliable, bring their own challenges. Expensive tires, high brake service costs, and fuel consumption that reminds you this car was never about saving money. But for those who understand what it represents, none of that matters. The Z28 isn't a commuter, it's an event. What sets the Chevrolet Camaro Z28 apart, even decades after its debut, is how directly it speaks to the driver's instincts. You feel its history every time you turn the key. It's a physical link to a time when cars were built around the senses, not software. Each generation carries forward that essence, the grip, the growl, the moment the road seems to disappear beneath you and it's just you, the car, and the horizon. That's what the Z28 promises, not perfection, but presence. So whether it's a 1969 original gleaming in a garage, a 93 LT1 howling through a mountain pass, or a 2014 LS7 howling around a circuit, the message remains the same. Driving isn't about numbers on a spec sheet, it's about connection. The Chevrolet Camaro Z28 has taught that lesson for nearly 60 years, and it continues to challenge anyone who thinks performance can be simulated or sanitized. The world will keep changing, but the Z28's roar, mechanical, human, defiant, will always remind us why we fell in love with driving in the first place. Because legends don't retire, they just find new roads to conquer. When the Chevrolet Camaro Z28 roared back to life in 2014, it wasn't just a return, it was a reckoning. After a 12-year hiatus, Chevrolet had already revived the Camaro nameplate in 2010, but the Z28 name carried different weight. It wasn't about nostalgia or badge appeal. It was about reclaiming legitimacy. The 2014 Chevrolet Camaro Z28 was a declaration that pure, unfiltered performance could still exist in a world dominated by turbochargers, dual-clutch transmissions, and electronic filters. It arrived like a thunderclap, reminding everyone what a real driver's car felt like when freed from compromise. The engineers behind the 2014 Z28 didn't set out to make the fastest Camaro ever built, they aimed to create the most capable. They started with the already aggressive fifth-generation Camaro platform and stripped it down, piece by piece, until only the essentials remained. Sound deadening? Gone. Air conditioning? Optional. Luxury comforts? Sacrificed for speed. The focus was laser sharp. Build a track-ready car that could dominate corners as confidently as it destroyed straights. Under the hood lay the 7.0-liter LS7 V8 from the Corvette Z06, a naturally aspirated masterpiece delivering 505 horsepower and one of the most intoxicating mechanical symphonies ever produced by an American. This version of the Chevrolet Camaro Z28 wasn't meant for everyone, and that was the point. It demanded attention, skill, and respect. The carbon ceramic brakes, ultra-sticky Pirelli Trofeo R tires, and Multimatic DSSV dampers weren't just upgrades. They were commitments to a philosophy. The Z28 was built for the driver who didn't just want to go fast, but wanted to earn that speed. Every control surface, every vibration, every ounce of feedback spoke directly to the hands on the wheel. It was unapologetically analog in a digital age, and that made it unforgettable. The reception was explosive. Critics hailed it as one of the most focused American performance cars ever built. On racetracks, it outpaced cars costing 2 or 3 times as much, thanks to its obsessive engineering. But its rawness was both its greatest strength and its limitation. This Z28 was uncompromising, a car that punished the inattentive as easily as it rewarded the precise. On the street, its aggressive setup made it less friendly. On the track, it was transcendence. Chevrolet knew exactly what they were doing. They didn't chase volume, they built a benchmark. By creating the 2014 Z28, Chevrolet honored its heritage without being trapped by it. This wasn't a retro remake. It was an evolution. The lineage that began in 1967 with a small block race car for the streets had matured into a modern-day track assassin. The through line was unmistakable. Purity of purpose, driver engagement, and a refusal to dilute performance for comfort. That consistency across nearly half a century cemented the Z28 as one of the most coherent performance legacies in automotive history. As the sixth generation of Camaro launched in 2016, the Z28 temporarily stepped aside while the ZL1 took the spotlight. Yet its influence lingered in every inch of the new platform: the sharper handling, the improved balance, the emphasis on driver feel. Even without a badge, the spirit of the Z28 informed everything that came after. Enthusiasts still whispered about its return, hoping that Chevrolet would once again unleash a version dedicated purely to precision and control, rather than headline-grabbing horsepower figures, in the context of the modern performance landscape, dominated by supercharged engines, electric powertrains, and computer-managed perfection. The Chevrolet Camaro Z28 remains a reference point. It represents the last great stand of mechanical purity in a market racing toward automation. The 2014 model didn't just revive a name, it redefined what it meant. It proved that technology and tradition could coexist when guided by purpose, that innovation didn't have to erase authenticity. For collectors and drivers alike, the modern Z28 occupies a unique space. It's both an heirloom and a weapon, a car that can be cherished as a piece of history and driven like it was meant to be punished. Its scarcity adds allure. Chevrolet produced only a few thousand units, each one built to the same demanding standard. The car doesn't need hype. It speaks through its lap times, its visceral sensations, and its ability to remind even the most jaded enthusiast why they fell in love with driving in the first place. The Z28 nameplate, across every generation, has represented the tension between restraint and rebellion. From the 302-powered original to the LS7 Thunderstorm of 2014, it has walked that fine line with integrity. Every time it reappears, it redefines what performance means in its era. And perhaps most importantly, it always reminds us that power is only half the story. The other half is control. As Chevrolet continues to navigate a future shaped by electrification and sustainability, the lessons of the Camaro Z28 will endure. The next great performance car may not burn gasoline or roar in quite the same way, but the essence of the Z28, its precision, its honesty, its unwavering commitment to the driver, will continue to influence what comes next. Because the legacy of the Chevrolet Camaro Z28 isn't confined to its past, it's a challenge to the future, asking every engineer and enthusiast alike, what does real performance mean now, and who has the courage to chase it?